few days later. Math came to see me during the Earth Night. He's still concerned for Jesus. He seems to be struggling with doubt, the brightest of our guardian angels informed me. I understand he's down there to guide humans into faith, but there he is, tossing and turning in his bed every night, worrying about death and judgment. Surely the son can't be doubting his own existence. It doesn't make sense. I have to admit that I'm inclined to agree with Math. In the silence that followed, I considered taking up the matter with our boss, but I already knew what he would say, and that is what I said to Math. "Is Jesus our boss's son?" I asked the confused angel opposite me. "Of course he is," came Math's impatient reply. "Then trust him." Math returned to Capernaum to watch over Jesus in his fitful sleep. I stayed in my office, asking myself the question that Math had raised. Is Jesus allowed to have doubts? Next morning, I decided to join Math for Jesus' morning prayers. As always, when at home, he climbed the small hill behind the village and sat on a smooth rock, looking over the lake where his fishermen friends were scratching their now occasional living. "Someone who is rich can never really understand what it is to be poor," Jesus began. "He may try to imagine it, but his imagination will always fall far short of the truth of poverty." Jesus was in the same preoccupied mood as before. I indicated to Math to say nothing. "One who has knowledge," he continued, "cannot appreciate what it is to be ignorant, and one who has faith cannot comprehend doubt." Jesus watched the small wooden boats moving across the surface of the water below. "What's all that about?" Math asked me. I studied the shapes and patterns of Jesus' thoughts until I began to understand where they were leading. "I think he is saying," I replied to Math, "that it is not wrong to be poor. Poverty is a gap that can lead to wealth given the chance. What's wrong is to deny someone that chance. Similarly, ignorance is not wrong if it leads to knowledge. So it is with doubt. Doubt is the space into which faith can grow." My question was answered, but I could see from Jesus' heavy heart that he had one of his own. And that question lay at the centre of his doubt. He continued to stare across the constantly moving water of the lake. I began to sense certain depth in the silence around us that informed me that my boss was close by. Not until the fishermen had hauled their boats up onto the rattling shingle did Jesus' question come. "Death and judgment," he said suddenly. "Can any human survive them? Can it be true that there is real life beyond it, or is that just a human fantasy?" Math nearly burst out with 5 times as many answers as there'd been questions, but I just managed to silence him before he uttered a word. Otherwise, he would certainly have taken us over the line into inappropriate intervention. While Math struggled to maintain his silence, there came a gentle voice from heaven, the same still, small voice that once calmed Elijah's storm of doubt. "There are 3 things that last forever," my boss said, "and the greatest of them is love." With his father's words echoing round his mind, Jesus stood up and returned to the lakeside to join his friends. Math stayed with me, full to bursting with the things that he'd wanted to say. "Math," I said sternly, holding back the flood, "do not speak a word until you have focused your mind on our boss and away from your own concerns." I waited while Math wrenched his mind away from his own ideas and directed it on the pure love of his boss. Eventually, Math's angelic mind turned to me, now calmer, and he asked, "Does the boss ever give a straight answer to a simple question?" That evening. Before I begin to describe to you all that happened today, I need to explain some more about angels. You humans, so far as I can understand, see people according to the dimensions of the physical universe. That is, according to their height, their width, and their depth. So, if someone is particularly wide or particularly high, then you can see them more easily. Well, with angels, it's rather similar, except that we can hardly see physical things at all. What we see are the spiritual dimensions of faith, hope, and especially love. To our eyes, those who love little are little, while our boss, for example, who loves all his creatures, is, well, unmissable. Earlier today, after I returned to my office, Jesus set off again on his travels, up to the hill country near Nazareth, where he was brought up. His friends had spent the last few days busily fishing. Watching Matthew, the tax collector, trying to handle a boat is entertaining, in order to provide for their families before the next trip. Jesus, as you know, has spent that time agonising over death and judgment, but he also got round to repairing the roof of his house, which had been all but demolished by 4 faithful but clumsy friends of a man who was completely paralysed, until he met Jesus. Jesus and his friends were just entering a town called Nain when they encountered the funeral procession for a local man who died, leaving his poor mother an unsupported, penniless widow. Now, whatever this woman's human predicament, she was huge in her love for her dead son. To my eyes, she stood out from the crowd like a whale in a goldfish bowl. Just as Jesus spotted this woman, he could hardly miss her. I heard the fragmented concerns in his mind smashing together into gloriously united understanding. Jesus stepped up to the dead man's coffin and, combining his own renewed faith with the astonishing love of the bereaved mother, he called after the man's spirit, which was tangled in the web of his own human selfishness. "Young man," Jesus said, "come back." The opposition spirit that was carrying the man away to death stopped instantly, throwing away its captive as if it had been stung. The director of my boss's work gently guided the discarded spirit back to his empty body. Immediately, the dead man sat up. Jesus helped him out of his grave clothes and presented him to his astounded mother. A great cheer went up from the crowd of mourners. Jesus and the woman stood facing each other, each wearing smiles that might have split their fragile faces. Then I turned and saw one more smile that was even broader and deeper than theirs. Standing in my office doorway was my boss.